I made about $10,000 Ubering in this very car on weekends over the course of about a year. I did 650 rides, and the majority of earnings were actually from tips, because the average base pay from Uber was $7, but the average tip per ride was $8. When I first started driving for Uber, I would get one tip about every 5 rides, between $2 and $10, which averaged out to a $1 tip per ride. But by the end of my little Uber career, I was getting a $2 to $20 tip every other ride, which boosted that $1 tip per trip up to $8 in tips per trip. So from being a noob on Uber to basically finding the best formula that worked for me, I basically 10x'd my tips alone, and that doesn't include getting better at knowing when and where to Uber and exactly which trips to accept. In fact, my acceptance rate on trips was between 20 and 30% usually. My previous video about quitting Uber went into things that some people said were unreasonable, dangerous, illegal, or basically just being spineless or trading my dignity for this gig app. Now, the stuff I was doing I don't think was that insane, but we will go ahead and jump into the stuff that was not legal. That sounds bad. We're gonna start with the illegal activities I did to get better tips, and then I'll do the legal things that I think anyone driving Uber should do if you want to make more money, okay? Starting off, nobody wears their seatbelt for some reason. Look, the car is beeping, it's so annoying. What do you think the beep means? Just put it on. You are the one that faces legal consequences, like getting a ticket if you're pulled over. And so a lot of drivers are very like to the books, they don't want to get in trouble with the law. I don't really care, it's not that big of a deal to me. Could they die? Yes. Could they become a projectile if I crash into something and then they shoot through the back of my seat and kill me? I don't know, I guess. But if they don't want to, I'm not gonna start the trip with something confrontational. I did college campuses, I did college towns, and there were lots of students who were drinking. Not only were they drinking, but they were also drinking underage, and they would bring their drinks in the car and sip on them on the drive. They'd have beers, but some people had like mixed drinks, be it in solo cups or in, I don't know, like little fruity whatever. And they just spent like 20 bucks on this drink. I don't know how they got it out of a bar. I thought you had to keep drinks in a bar, but I guess they just walk out with their drink and they bring it into my vehicle. Again, this is not legal, but I didn't want to confront them about it because I'm a lazy ass. Not really. I mean, I am, but also because anytime that I have an issue with a passenger and I make it clear to them, they're not going to tip me, and I'm here for tips. I had one goal in mind, and that is to make as much money as I can on Uber as quickly as possible. The one that I do, however, question that I potentially shouldn't have done is baby seats. So I don't have a baby seat in my car. Some Uber drivers actually carry one, but the thing is, different kids need different size seats, and I was like, which one do I get? Do I get like an infant seat, or do I get, I don't know. If you're ordering an Uber, it's your responsibility to have a baby seat with you, but some people end up in a pinch where they need to get somewhere, they have a child, and they don't have a baby seat with them, and so they call an Uber. And there was one lady, she had maybe a 1 to 2 year old kid. She just plopped the kid in the back of the car. The kid was literally just sitting in the center. She wasn't even holding the kid or anything. The kid was just like in the back of my car, completely not strapped in. And before I went, I was like, do you have a baby seat? And she obviously didn't. She was in the middle of a parking lot, and I was like, is it okay if she rides without one? And I know the answer is no, but I was kind of trying to like insinuate that this seems unsafe, because it is unsafe to and she was like, it's fine, can you just take us? I sat there for a second. I looked at the GPS. It was a 6-mile trip. It was about 12 minutes. It was in town, no highway. The traffic was low. I was like, all right, so we did it. And I drove just the absolute safest I possibly could. I went 500 the speed limit. I checked my blind spots like Scooter blowing a bubble. Legally, I was obligated technically to refuse the ride. But in the split-second decision making, I was like, do I cancel this trip and leave her and the baby stranded in the parking lot, where all they're gonna probably do is just order another Uber and another Uber until one takes them? Or should I just take on the risk and be the driver that tries to get them there safely? So in the moment, I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just do it. And by the way, she didn't even tip me, so that's actually completely irrelevant to this topic. Other more common ones include more people piling into this vehicle than are legally allowed. So this is a 5-seater. It's 5 seat belts. We have had as many as 7 people in this vehicle, because 3 will sit in the back, 1 person will lie across the 3, and then 2 people sit in the front. And honestly, as a passenger, I've done this in other cars. When I'm with a couple friends and we have too much stuff in the car, like one time I went to IKEA with 2 people, and all the IKEA stuff filled the back. So one person literally just lied on all the furniture, and his head was like up by the roof. Also, I've shared front seats with people. So is it something that's safe? No. You're with a bunch of friends and you just want to get somewhere quick. I have 2 responses to this. The first is, just try not to scratch my doors with your shoes because you're literally lying across my seats. And the second is, are you gonna give me a tip for this? And they say yes. This leads me into my next thing, which is I literally just ask for tip money. If I want a tip, I can just ask them and they just give me money usually. Okay, a lot of people will say, hey, can you do blank? I'll tip you good. Anytime they say this, believe it or not, it's actually been true in my case. Now, good is relative, I guess. Like someone would be like, oh, don't worry, I tip real good. And then they give me like $7, which I really appreciate. $7 from someone that tips $7, but you can't brag about tipping $7. That's, and to be clear, I, as an Uber passenger, I don't usually tip. I tip in very rare circumstances because as a driver, I knew they were getting paid plenty good without a tip. There's no obligation to tip. It's not like food service where they get paid $3 an hour and they expect 20% so that they can pay their bills. No, Uber drivers will be fine without tips. And so I truly don't mind if someone doesn't tip. I also really appreciate it if someone tips $7. But someone who tips $7 and then is like, you're welcome for the $7. It's not that special. Calm down, big bucks. Anyway, what I was gonna say is after 650 trips, only one person ever said, don't worry, I'll tip you, and then they don't tip. Everyone else that says I'll tip you, they actually do. There's so many ways to ask for tips in non-confrontational ways that don't offend them, that don't make it awkward, and that worst case, you just don't get a tip, which was probably gonna be the default anyway. So in the case that someone does ask something of you, as long as you're comfortable with it, not that you should be comfortable with an open canister of beer or whatever, but if you're like me and you're mentally sick in the head and you are like, you know what, I'll do it. Just be like, would you mind tipping me for this? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. You just have to ask. Don't say like, you better fucking tip me. But you can just be like, all right, yeah, we can do that. But I would appreciate it if you don't mind, if you throw me a little tip at the end of the ride. Like, you can say it in almost a funny comedic way so that it seems like serious, but not like, haha, JK, unless you want to give me some money. It works. If people give me money, would I just ask them for money? However, I must say that I did some quick math in my head, aka I just made up this number, but I think it's pretty accurate. 95% of tippers are people that I had a conversation with. I have gotten so few tips from people that don't speak to me. And the thing is, there's a meme on, like, this meme has been prevalent for years, and that is, you get in an Uber, the Uber driver says nothing. They drive you to your destination, 5 stars, $5 tip. This is BS. This is propaganda. We're being psyoped. We're being psyoped by Twitter users, okay? This is a lie. I cannot stress enough, if you want a tip, you have to talk to these people. Some people don't want to talk, and that's okay. You can't force conversation. If you say like, hello, how are you, whatever, and they're like, good, and then they put earbuds in, don't keep trying to talk to them. Just let them vibe to their music, whatever. If they're on the phone, don't try to like interrupt their conversation. But anytime there is silence, you should take advantage and try to have a conversation. And in my experience, that is the only way to get a tip. I've ordered maybe like 25 Ubers in my entire life. I realized in hindsight, I was much more encouraged to tip people who spoke to me at least a little bit. More than a hello, but less than a yapping my ear off, because that's a little bit annoying. Try to find something personalized that they're into, and then just let them talk. People really like talking about themselves. So as a person who, I didn't mind talking about myself and answering the same questions about Teslas or about what I do outside of Uber, but it was kind of a win-win situation when I could get them in a conversation real quick, and then they lead the conversation and I can just be there. For one, it's kind of like entertainment for me, and so it keeps me alert and keeps me like energized, because if I had like 10 quiet passengers in a row for like 4 hours, I would get sleepy after I'm like doing this late into the night. I would do 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. usually on weekends. So also I would just get sick of talking. Like if I talk for 4 hours straight, I know I literally make YouTube videos for a living, but I can only talk for so long. The best ways to do this, one is just give them the aux, let them pick the music, and then you ask them about the music, they'll talk about music. One thing I would not recommend is asking someone where they're going. I don't know why people do this, but I've had drivers ask me like, oh, where are you headed to? The goal isn't to learn about them or learn about what they're doing. The goal is to get them to talk about what they like to talk about. A lot of people, however, will take full advantage of this and start like trauma dumping on you in the car. It's okay, I don't mind. I thought it was entertaining. Lots of relationship problems, but it helped me get tips. Again, when it comes to driving, it's not about efficiency. It's all about comfort and safety. So a lot of people would actually get nervous seeing that I'm in a Tesla because it's easy to drive a Tesla fast. The acceleration is very quick. and drivers get a little bit numb to the acceleration, but passengers don't. If it's someone that's not in a Tesla every day, they're not going to be used to the like, Plus it has regen braking, so it slows down without touching the brake. A lot of drivers are just bad at driving Teslas, and so they take off too fast and you slow down and then you go back up and people would get nauseous. So I actually had maybe 10 or 15 people be like, I've been in Teslas before, and I don't mean like this in a rude way, but could you just make sure you drive safely? And I would know exactly what they're talking about, and I'd be like, yeah, no problem. I know a lot of people drive Teslas too fast. In whatever car you are in, take the advice from Hank Hill, who, when asked how he drives so safely, he said he would imagine the accelerator is an egg, and you don't want to break the egg when you're accelerating. So I would do the same thing. As I accelerate, oh, I don't want to crack the egg. Oh, perfect. Just nice, smooth ease off. Even if it's like you're going 3 over the speed limit, I've had people be like, can you slow down a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Is it weird that they're upset that I'm going 68 and a 65? Kind of, but I don't know why, and I don't care. I could just slow down a little bit. However, some people want you to drive really fast. Some people want to feel what a Tesla feels like, but you got to keep in mind, most people requesting this are drunk, and there's a reason that you can't drive drunk, and that's because you're a little bit impaired. So you shouldn't take driving advice from a drunk person. But the nice thing about someone being drunk is the acceleration feels a lot quicker than a sober person. So if I just hit the gas real quick and I just go from like, do a pull from 30 to 60, they're blown away. They think it's so crazy. I will say that Uber, it started tracking my speed, and it would actually send me alerts and warnings if I was caught speeding with a passenger, I think over 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. However, these alerts don't actually mean anything unless your passenger reports you. So if you get a speed alert and they report you for speeding, you're probably going to get banned from Uber. And the thing is, accidents do happen, even if you're being incredibly safe. And so my sister lives in New York, and she just Ubers a lot of places. She actually recently was in an accident as a passenger. It wasn't serious, it was just a fender bender, but she did end up with a pretty bad headache after her driver was run into. The driver ended up getting out and yelling at this other driver, and she's just like in the back of an Uber, like her head is like pounding because she just like got thrown back in her seat. She didn't know what to do. She just got out of the car and left. And she just walked home. And I was like, that's crazy. And that's the best segue I could come up with on the spot, because if you're injured in an accident,
your injury could potentially be worth millions without time-consuming appointments, paperwork, upfront costs, and just reliving the traumatic event over and over. Insurance companies often lowball clients' claims, but if you become Morgan & Morgan's client, they will fight to get you the money you deserve for getting hurt. They've achieved significant verdicts in the past couple months for victims involved in a huge plethora of injuries, including life-altering car crashes, like $12 million in Florida, which is 34 times the highest insurance offer, $26 million in Philadelphia, 40 times the highest insurance offer. One client was hit by an uninsured motorist and sued his own insurance after they offered just $50,000, which didn't even cover medical expenses. So Morgan & Morgan secured him over $5 million. Morgan & Morgan's fee is absolutely free unless you win your case. You're just a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. You can start your own claim now with Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com/goherping, linked in the description, or by using your phone to scan the QR code on screen. Thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring. Back to the video.
In this same area of things is that I would fulfill every request that I can. I didn't do anything too weird. It was basically things like, hey, can we stop by this gas station so I can get some cigarettes or get a vape or something? Or, oh, like I just remembered, we're leaving Target, I forgot to get cheese. Frick, because the thing is, the stuff people requested wasn't actually a big deal. They're freaking out because they have to Uber to and from the grocery store for to make dinner for their kids, and they forgot cheese, and now they're in the car already going back to the house. Just be like, before you even ask, just be like, oh, no problem, well, we can turn around, let's go get cheese. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, it's whatever, it'll take what, like 10 minutes? And they're like, well, yeah, but no one ever, the bar for Uber drivers is incredibly low. And what I'm going to say might sound minorly xenophobic, but I don't mean it to be. That is that if you speak English, you already have a buff over like 50% of Uber drivers. Like, I can't tell you how many passengers are just like, oh my God, I'm so glad you speak English, which is basically just their way of saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you're not from Pakistan. The bar is so low. Speak English and be just genuinely give people some leeway. Uber is a gig app that is not about speed or efficiency. It's about quality of service, in my opinion. So Amazon Flex, DoorDash, DoorDashers don't care how carefully you transport the food across the city. They just want it fast. They're freaking hungry. Get them their food fast. Amazon customers, they're paying for same day delivery. They're paying for 2-hour delivery. They want it there in 2 hours. They don't even care if the box is damaged, whatever. As long as it's in one piece and it works, you get it there as fast as possible. But you don't want to maximize speed and efficiency for Uber. Not only is it more dangerous as a driver and does more wear and tear on your car and uses more gas or even electricity in the Tesla and is more stressful, but you will make more money by doing fewer trips better, basically. And so if you go turn around for that mom who needs cheese from the store at no extra cost, she'll be like, do I need to pay you extra for this? No, don't worry about it. Do I need to add this to the app and no, don't worry about it. We'll just, it's what, Harris Teeter? Well, yeah, we'll just turn around. This happens a lot. A lot of people are forgetful and a lot of people just realize like, oh shoot, my little cotton candy vape isn't letting me suck on it anymore. Please, I can't go 5 seconds without sucking on a vape. Go get them a vape. In fact, if you want to go crazy, let them suck on that vape. Why am I saying suck so much? I let people vape in the car, and people every day, one person would be like, yo, can I vape in here? And my response question was always, what flavor is it? I don't know. I don't know why I always ask this. I don't care what flavor it is. I would let them vape any flavor. But what I realized is when I ask them what flavor vape they have, it was an opportunity to connect, because what I want to do is I want to connect with the passengers as quickly as possible. This is I'm getting way too deep into this, but you can tell I had a lot of fun with Uber, I guess. I don't vape anymore. Vaping is very cringe and not epic. You shouldn't do it. But I did know enough about like how to build a mod or like different tanks that I liked or just the flavors that I like. And so when I ask what flavor, before they even say, I'm being like, I freaking love that flavor. I don't care what flavor it is. They'd say like mint. I hated mint. That was disgusting. I liked the fruity flavors. But if he's like, oh, it's watermelon. All right, watermelon, that's cool. Yeah, you can vape in here. Not only did he get permission to do something he wanted, but he also got approval of his vape flavor, which puts him on like a pedestal. And so he's more likely to tip. I think pretty much everyone that I let vape or drink in the car left a tip, so cool. Not only do I offer my time for free and not ask for anything in return, generally speaking, although sometimes I'd be like, could you tip me for this if it's really out of the way? I also offered free stuff. So I was really proud of my Uber setup. It was super clean, super minimalist, but in the back, I got a shower caddy. Before my night, I would have drinks in my fridge and drinks in my freezer. I'd put the drinks that are in my freezer in the back of my car, and I'd put the drinks that were in the fridge in the shower caddy. So they're ready to go, they're ice cold. I would do 2 waters and 2 sport drinks. I went with sport drinks because a lot of people are getting off work. I also drove a lot of construction people and it was super hot out, and they treated a cold Gatorade in 90-degree weather like they were being given liquid gold. They were so happy. I would also have snacks. I'd have a couple like protein items as well as chips and cookies. Okay, I started with cookies. Cookies were a bit too crummy because they were just understandably eating in the car and then the crumbs would get everywhere. So I started opting for fruit snacks and candies that don't get crumbs everywhere. But people really liked them, and almost everyone, they'd see it and they'd say, oh, how much do those cost? And I'd say, oh, it's free. You can grab whatever you want. And they're like, what? It's like they got in the car with Mr. Beast. Like they were freaking out that they got free food and drinks in their Uber that they were paying for. And some people would take full advantage. I had some folks who generally took up more than one seat in the vehicle clear out my entire shower caddy. In the time I got to these people's houses, they had eaten like a feast of snacks that unfortunately were more valuable than they actually paid for the trip. Like I would do a $7 trip and they ate like $11 in snacks. And so I had a $4 loss on this trip. The good news is that was few and far between. The majority of people would take 1 or 2 items valued at maybe $1, and they would always tip $3 to $5 to $10 for this. And then once the cold drinks ran out, I would get the ones that were in the freezer, put them up front. They thawed out by this point. And so there was a cycle of cold Gatorade and water throughout the night, which people thought was crazy. They thought it was so cool. You can also, of course, just get a cooler, put it on ice, whatever. I didn't have a cooler, but yeah, maybe I should have gotten one. And the thing is, like, a pack of Oreos is not a special thing, but it was truly the thought that counted. And also people just get a huge rush of like endorphins when they get to eat sugar. So if you get someone consuming sugary drinks and foods in the back of your car, they're going to be in a good mood and they're going to tip you more. The great thing about tips is anyone that tips also probably had a good ride. And so I like putting people in a good mood And it's like basically it takes so little effort. Like I would spend $50 a week on snacks. Not only do people really like it, but I would get like $250 in return for that. So like, why not? People would be like, hey, could I get some Oreos? And I'd be like, oh yeah, grab some. Also, could you hand me some? And then we just like eat Oreos together. Like you get a little social food gathering where everyone in the car is just eating Oreos, and then you get tips from everyone. Clean car. So simple. So freaking simple. And yet when I get in Ubers as a passenger, they are some nasty cars. Not only are they nasty, but they also have so much like protection all over them. Like they'll have like double layered floor mats. They'll have like plastic taped to the walls of the car, and they'll have these like ugly seat covers and like things to grab. Like it's like they're treating me like an Ebola patient with how wrapped up the car is, and then it's not even clean. People thought it was crazy that they'd get in my car and I have just floor mats and nothing else. No seat covers. I mean, people were so scared they'd stain my white seats, but that's what I liked. They were nervous. Well, I didn't want them to be nervous, but they saw how well I was caring for my vehicle, and in turn, they would care for it well. My vehicle was never like abused or dirtied by anyone. Even though I had passengers that would vomit, I had vomit bags, they would open the door. They didn't want to dirty up my vehicle. They would be careful with where they placed their feet. They'd make sure their keys aren't scratching anything, and they'd keep their hands to themselves. 650 trips was over 1,000 passengers because I did lots of groups of 2 and 3 and 7. Literally over 1,000 strangers, and they all treated my car so well, even if they were drunk. It was very nice to see, and I think that's partly because they wanted to leave it the way that they found it. And that was super clean, and also it smelled really good in here. Not only would the car smell good, I would get the Febreze Ocean. I actually have one in here. It's empty now. This is not a sponsor, by the way. I just really like these. It was the Febreze, I think it was ocean scented car things, and I'd clip it to the back. I got probably 200 compliments where they'd be like, oh, it smells good in here. And then I was like, I could up the ante here. I upped my personal I showered before Uber, and I found just like these really nice deodorants that I liked. And crazy enough, people actually complimented me on how I smelled. Not only was that an ego boost, but that's also kind of ballsy. I would be too nervous to be like, you smell good. Like, how do people do that? They literally reach around the back seat and they're like, bro, you smell good. You're in close quarters for 10 minutes to an hour, and I don't want to offend them with my stench. Is that the case for passengers? No, I had some stinky ass passengers. God damn, they smell bad. But that's why it's never a bad idea to start the trip with your window cracked. Like, I would oftentimes start a trip like this, just in case they smelled. And then if they don't smell, I can roll it back up. But if they do smell, I can leave it down. But because you don't want someone to get in the car and then you're immediately like, oh, fuck, dude, it smells bad in here. And then you go like, roll it down. You don't want to do that. So yes, quick tip, roll your window down before the trip. But yeah, I would literally clean the car every night after Uber. You just want to clean it up immediately. So I would keep baby wipes in the car, and then I just had cleaning supplies at home. I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm going to do some car cleaning videos because I am kind of a car-centric channel now. It's very simple. I would wipe down the white seats with baby wipes, a little bit of water, some regular microfiber cloths. I have an interior dash and glass spray. I think it's by Turtle Wax. I would just spray it on all the panels. Oils and lotions can really affect a car's interior, so I would always wipe down anything the person naturally touches. Also, just a quick, easy vacuum. I would also, luckily I have a garage, so I would, after each night, keep my windows actually rolled down. And yes, you don't want your car to smell like a garage, but I prefer the garage smell over random people smell, like after 25 people got in and out and it just smells like kind of funky. The worst thing was when I get up the next day to go like just run some errands, I get in my car and it smells like 20 different people. You don't have to go passenger to passenger to passenger to passenger. You can take a minute in between trips, and I would make sure the snacks are replenished and there's a new water in there. Make sure the seat's clean so that someone else isn't going to sit on dirt and then rub the dirt into your seat. Take your time, in my opinion. I think it's worth focusing on that quality. I also did avoid people that commute to work with Uber. So I would never, I did this a couple times, like for a week. I Ubered from 5 a.m.-ish to 9 a.m. Basically, I was like, oh, so many people Uber to work, let me hit that crowd. They're all so tired. They all just got ready for work. None of them want to be awake, and none of them tip. And I don't blame them. It would be basically dumb for them to tip every morning. I had much more luck Ubering people that don't Uber often. It's like a special treat for them. It's people going out for their birthday, or they're traveling and they're going to a wedding, or even if it's for a work trip or something, they're in a new city and they want to ask me about Raleigh and stuff. It was the people who get in an Uber every morning, 5 days a week, that it just wasn't worth it to me. They got to get there somehow, but I'm gonna let other drivers deal with that. I hunted down drunk people. They were my bread and butter, because drunk people, I don't know, they just like to give up money for some reason. I mean, I guess that's why like casinos offer free drinks. It costs them a lot of money for all that alcohol, but it does not even come close to how much money a drunk person spends in a slot machine versus a sober person spending. So if they're gonna give you a cash tip, they don't feel like counting out ones. They're just gonna give you a wad of cash and leave. Also, people just surprisingly really like banter. Like nobody likes small talk. I can't find anyone that actually likes small talk. They like to banter, and one of the things I like about drunk people specifically is you can bully them. I don't know why, but drunk people really like to be verbally bullied. Essentially, I stopped talking to passengers like they were clients. The thing is, a lot of the like professional things that you would think a driver should do for money, it doesn't work. Like getting out and opening the door for them, doing these formalities you would expect from like a butler or someone at a hotel. In my experience, it didn't actually help anything. They were like, oh, thank you, but that's it. I think it was just too obviously fake. At least me doing it just didn't come off as natural. What worked for me was the moment someone gets in a car, I just pretend like we've been friends for like a few months already. And I just jump straight into conversation. And yeah, like I said, the first thing I would do is try to find something that clicks and a way that we can connect. Because I'm basically trying to sell them on a tip while also having a nice conversation at the same time. So the most blatant, easy example is I'm picking up a passenger and his name is Alex. Easy clap. Or her. It's actually even better because Alex is not only a common name, but it's unisex, and so I Ubered a lot of Alexes. I would have plenty of flops. I had plenty of things I attempted that didn't work. It was kind of like getting rejected, but the rejection was no tip. So there was one guy I was gonna try and do just a really stupid joke, and I was like, Uber for Alex? How do you pronounce it? He's like, oh, it's pronounced Alex. I said, oh, Alex. Okay, I've never met an Alex before. And he was like, oh, really? That's cool. It was a joke. My name is Alex. You're supposed to be like, haha. It didn't work. It flopped. I had I don't know how many flops I had, but lots of jokes I made just didn't land, and it could be a little bit awkward, but whatever. It's fine. That reminds me actually of one that I did not write down, being that I use people's names up front. This is a cardinal sin of Ubering. The rule is the driver asks the passenger for their first name. The passenger gives the driver their first name before getting in the car, and if it does not align, you do not pick them up. So if I'm picking up a Joe, I'm not supposed to say, hey, Uber for Joe? No. Joe is supposed to say, hello, Uber for Joe, and then I say yes. In reality, passengers want the security of you confirming who they are because they're scared to get in the car with the wrong person. This doesn't make any sense. The passenger has my name. They have my car make and model and color, which was literally purple Tesla Model 3. They also have not only my license plate, so they can just walk around. It's on the front and back, because you have the little license plate sticker on the front. And they have a picture of my face. There is absolutely no way that you're going to accidentally get in a different guy named Alex, who looks like this, in a purple Tesla Model 3 with the plate RAR X3. That doesn't happen. And yet people still want you to confirm, hey, are you Joe? It's stupid. I know, it's really dumb. Because the driver, we don't have anything. All we have is a first name. We don't know what the passenger looks like. It could just be some random person getting in my car. And this has happened before. It was always an honest mistake when I'm Ubering at events. So let's say there's a football event and there are multiple Ubers pulling up and they see the Uber light and they're like, oh, that must be my Uber. But no, I actually had someone get all the way in and close the door, and it wasn't until I was about to pull off that she realized that I was the wrong Uber driver. Even though I said Uber for Caitlin or whatever. And she's like, yeah, but she just wasn't paying attention. She just heard Uber and assumed it was for her. So that was a side tangent. That doesn't help me with tips or anything. I just found it kind of annoying. On the topic of not treating them like clients, I also realized that I forgot. Like, a mistake I was making was trying to match the energy of my passenger. If my passenger was sad, I'd try to stay chill and quiet. If my passenger was in an incredible mood, I'd try to be all jolly. I know I entertain for a living on YouTube, but I'm not very good at acting. I just kind of have to be myself, and I realized that that's the best thing to do, and that's okay if someone in the car is angry or sad. You don't have to You don't have to become them. Maybe this is obvious to you, but to me, I kind of had to learn it. I realized, wait, I can just rub my mood off onto them. So if they're sad, I just act happy, and maybe I can't fix what they're doing, but they're just around a happy person, and it kind of helps. So I realized ultimately I just got to be myself. That sounds cheesy, but it is what it is, chat. However, I would pay attention to my own body language. So very small thing, but something I realized, like as a passenger, I had been in cars with people who, for one, they would be on the phone driving me around, but two, they would literally say like this is a very common Uber driver position. They're on the phone, even if they're not, they have earbuds in themselves, like they put a left earbud in. But this is such a closed off position. Like I'm back there and they're like, it's like they're hiding from me, and I'm like, what the fuck? Do I look like I'm gonna infect you with something? Like you can at least like turn a little bit. But no, they'd be like this. So when I'm driving, my position was basically this. And so I'm kind of open towards this way, or I'm kind of like this. So it's a very small thing, but as a passenger myself, I prefer when people give me that more open body language. I feel like I'm charisma on command right now. On the topic of helping people, I would offer to help people pass just their trip. Yes, your obligation as a driver is nothing more than getting them to their destination, but you can still make money after the trip. That could have a lot of innuendos, but hear me out here. The most simple ones are someone older has a lot of stuff in the car with them and they live on a second floor apartment. You shouldn't just do it without saying, but if you offer and if you've kind of convinced them that you're like not going to come in and kill them and steal all their stuff, you can be like, hey, do you want help carrying this stuff up? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. Okay, here's one that I really am passionate about, and that is music. I love listening to music. I love sharing music that I have with people. And a fun little side thing I started doing was crafting these custom playlists just to play in Uber. Because what I realized is they can listen to top 40 whatever whenever they want, and I hate I don't listen to pop or anything. I have very obscure tastes, and I listen to these artists that have like 1,000 monthly listeners or 200 monthly listeners or a little bit bigger, like 10, 20,000, 100,000 monthly listeners, and people really liked hearing obscure music. Not only because they enjoy hearing someone else's taste that they've never heard before, but in the case that they also know that artist, they're like, whoa, I've never heard someone else play this before. Now, an artist who is not rare, he's incredibly popular, that is Skrillex. He's like the 400th most popular on Spotify. People don't hear Skrillex every day in an Uber. So when I would get another Skrillex fan in the car, that's just instant click, instant connection. And also I genuinely love listening to the music, so that was even better. But it was also just a really good conversation topic. So a lot of the music I listened to, people would say fit the car well. And then people would also comment that it sounds like I'm playing spaceship music. This was stuff like Fractal and Dusk and Anumi and Surge. I would play freaking Anime Step in the car. Even like Grimes, she's a little bit more popular. But I'd play lots of chill but upbeat, like Jungle and drum and bass. A little bit of glitch hop. I tried playing some rhythm. People do not like rhythm in the car, so no invaders, sadly. And then there were some where people recognized it, but they hadn't heard it in a while. Like Odeza is really popular. And so yeah, I would just basically cram all my favorite music into these themed playlists, and so many people would ask about the music. On the flip side, I also liked hearing other people's music. I'd literally just be like, hey, take the screen, put in your Spotify, whatever, played something. And I added songs to my own playlists by hearing other people's obscure taste in music. Basically, what are some things that people really care about? It's food and it's music. And so when you can share a snack with someone while sharing music, it's a very good bond that you can create very quickly, and you get good tip. So back to speeding, something that inevitably is going to happen is dangerous situations. I had close calls because I'm on the road so many hours a day. People sometimes also, we would drive around a lot of other drunk drivers, so I was like avoiding drunk drivers with passengers in my car. It was very fun, actually. But I also would occasionally make wrong turns, and so something that I've heard drivers make the mistake of is they're all about time and efficiency, and they're like, oh shoot, my turn's right here, and they just make it. It sucks when you make a wrong turn because it is kind of awkward, and sometimes it will add like if you miss an exit and you're in traffic, that could be another 15 minutes on a trip, and that sucks. But you just have to be genuinely apologetic and show that it was a mistake. Something else that people get nervous about is if they're being driven a way that they're not comfortable with. So a lot of people would ask that you, like, oh, actually, instead of going straight here, could you turn left and go like through this obscure neighborhood with 25 stop signs? Do I want to? No. but people much prefer being driven in ways that they already know how to get there. Now, this could be a safety risk because they could be leading you somewhere that you don't actually want to go and that you shouldn't be going. But as long as you're being cognizant of going in the right direction and they're clearly just taking you a different way. In fact, for a while, I would literally just ask, like, if there's a different way you want to go, just let me know. If you want to add any stops on, just let me know. Like, up front, I would get these formalities out of the way of snacks, music. Let me know if you want directions changed. It was very rare that people would, but 1 out of 30 or 40 trips, they'd be like, oh yeah, can you go this other way for me? And they like that. A few more things. Wow, this is really long, but I have a lot to say. One is that if I am in the mood, I would sometimes dabble with a little bit of guilt tripping for a tip. So if people asked what I do for a living outside Uber, I was like, you know what? I'm going to experiment. I'm going to see if I can get them to feel bad for me. And so I would talk about how as a kid, I wanted to be a YouTuber, and I did it for a few years, but my channel fell off, and now I'm struggling. If I could throw in these little things about how I'm trying to make money for a goal, or how I've been like a bit behind on like paying my debt off, people would they felt sympathy and they give a little bit extra. But I don't know how I felt about that. You can have a lot of luck there if you know how to do it. It just didn't come natural to me, so I wouldn't do it too often. I also assumed that I should focus on driving wealthier people for better tips, but actually there's really no correlation. I drove literally homeless people and I drove millionaires. Homeless people didn't tip more often than rich people, but they would tip. I had people who I picked up basically from the side of the road, and they would give me like $4 in cash, and it smells like shit, but that's okay, because $4 is... And I had people who were clearly well off that I was driving to go pick up their new car or something. That just wouldn't tip. So yeah, there was no point in focusing on that because it didn't seem to make a difference in my experience. One more is I tried to focus on people's intentions over their actions. So I think a lot of drivers are like trigger happy in the sense that they want to cancel rides on people that are mean to them or rude or bully them or whatever else. Some people just are super antisocial and don't know how to interact in certain social situations, and others are just in a really bad mood. It doesn't mean they are trying to let it out on you, but sometimes you might be a bit of a verbal punching bag, and I really didn't take it personally if someone was mean to me because they don't personally know me. They're clearly doing it from a place that they're in a terrible mood or they have something going on. As long as their intentions aren't to be rude, I really didn't care. Even if their intentions were to be rude, why would I care, I guess? Like, as long as they're not physically harming me, it's just like, whatever. Although there is sometimes some physical things that come into it. So some people are just very touchy in general, where they're like a guy that like, oh, like, let me tell you about this, and then he keeps like tapping your shoulder or whatever. I don't like being touched like that, but I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. I know that he's not trying to bother me. He's not trying to be weird. That's just how he is. Not that that's an excuse. If you really don't want it, I guess just tell him to stop. But personally, I didn't care enough, as long as they clearly weren't trying to be weird. I've talked to both male and female passengers where like a passenger will get in the front, which I was fine with. I liked passengers being in the front. But they would like place their hand on the driver's leg. Like, okay, all right, that's a little bit too far. I don't think I'd like it if someone put their hand on my leg. Drunk people, for example, can get a bit too harsh. Like there was this one guy who was basically like punching me like this, like not hard, but he was like, yo, like trying to get my attention. And the last and final thing for this Uber tips video, and by tips I mean getting tips, but I guess it's also tips on getting more tips. I found a routine that works for me, and then I stuck to it. I like to constantly iterate on a project. I like to try and get better and find like loopholes and hacks to improve and improve and improve. But ultimately, once I was a couple months into Uber, I figured out what works for me, and I stuck with it. I no longer wanted to have to try all these new things, and I figured it out. It was 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., college campus, Friday night, Saturday night, sometimes Thursday night. I knew my boundaries. I knew what I wanted to tell people about. I knew what music to play. I knew how to drive. I was just in a groove, and I did that for a while. I liked Uber, but I don't plan on going back to it. I truly don't believe I'll ever Uber again, unless I really have to, or maybe I'll have a change of heart, but it was cool while it lasted. I have a handful of Uber videos in my Gig Out playlist if you want to check those out. But that'll be it. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.